Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Movie Bros podcast. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. If you stumbled upon us, well, don't stumble away. We are your hosts, Duncan and Hayden. I'm Duncan, he's Hayden.
Hello, hello, hello.
We are two brothers. I'm sure that we are super original with this concept of picking a movie, watching that movie, and then discussing it and rambling and bantering and all the things.
Hey, no one's ever done this. We are the first, clearly.
We watch a little bit of everything from comedy, romance, horror, suspense, thriller, action, fantasy,
Historical epic.
fantasy, whatever you want to call this.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
And if you are curious on where to find us, this podcast is available on Apple, Amazon, and Spotify. And if you're curious about what might be coming up or any previous episodes, obviously look backwards in whatever listening portal that you use or platform, excuse me. But you can also find us on Instagram. That's where we kind of share this information as well. That's at the movie_bros, I believe. And otherwise, this is just a general discussion, and there's little different chapters or subcategory, whatever you want to call it.
Different sections that we're going to step in and out of. We're going to have general discussion. We have some other housekeeping type things that we say for the end of the episode.
And with that, Hayden, what are we watching? Or what did we watch this week?
Well, this week we watched the 1981 epic Excalibur, and our fast film facts are this is going to be directed by John Boorman. The name sounds familiar, but I didn't have the wherewithal to look up what else he had done, but considering how much of a production this was, I'm sure he was a well-known director at the time. This is written by Thomas Mallory and Rospo Pallenberg, based upon just the original Arthurian legend texts. I mean, even IMDb didn't really have a solid, based upon author for this. It's just, it was so old that it's not really attributed to one person at this point.
Gotcha.
Music here is by Trevor Jones, as well as a lot of classical pieces, mainly Prelude to Parsifal by Wagner, which I recognize because I listen to a lot of classical music, but it could have easily just been mistaken for the rest of the composed soundtrack, just because it fits very well. Cinematography here is by Alex Thompson. This stars a whole host of people, some of which I've never heard of, so I kind of just picked all the names I'd heard of and then grabbed a few other ones. I'm sure I might be missing some people because this is a huge cast. However, we have Nigel Terry, Helen Mirren, Nicholas Clay, Cherie, that's a French name, Cherie Lungi, Paul Joffrey, Nicole Williamson, Gabriel Byrne, Liam Neeson, Patrick Stewart, and Ciarán Hinds. And the trivia I have for this is that this won an Oscar in 1981. Duncan, what do you believe it was?
Costuming or set design is my guess.
You'd think so, but it won for cinematography, which I can kind of see,
I kind of see that. Because, we'll talk about it. There are bits that I'm like, oh, okay. But especially costuming, I feel like, Jesus.
I mean, a lot of what I had to say was just how much I love all the artistic armor design in this, but I'm surprised that wasn't there. Or maybe that category wasn't around in 1981, but
it's possible.
You would think it would be. In any event, that's kind of all I got. Do we want to jump into ratings or do we want to jump into discussion?
Let's jump in. I feel like I don't really know where we're going to land on ratings, so let's actually, because I feel like a lot of times we sync up on stuff.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. I would say let's save it this time because I want to hear reasons.
Okay.
I want to see what you're thinking first.
Okay, let's bury the lead, as it were.
Speaking of cinematography, literally right out the gate, there's several shots when I think it's Arthur's dad, which it threw me at first because I thought it was Arthur because his name is like Arthur, like almost Arthur.
There's a couple characters like that, and there's there's Mordred, and there's Morgana, and there's a bunch of people.
Those are their names from the tale.
Yes, and and one of the first things you find when you Google this is that this is the most accurate adaptation of Arthurian legend you can find, down to all the names, all the places where they filmed this. I mean, granted, it's 1981, so some of it doesn't translate as well, but we'll get to. But like, it's pretty accurate, and they hit a ton of plot points super quickly.
Yes, but I did I
It
did
does
feel
drag in the third,
I did feel the runtime, dude. Like,
which is weird because it's not like a hugely long movie.
I mean, it's not short, and I definitely like. I can't remember what we just watched. That was like an absolute struggle to even. I think it was. What did we watch recently? Where I was like, "Oh, I'm
Stalker.
Stalker." Yeah, like it wasn't that bad. At least things actually happened,
I
but it's
think the
still.
the final third of this was definitely more of a slog.
Well, I could see how they're trying to do it justice, where they actually tell the complete story, but there's just too much story to tell in 2 hours and change even. Like, they probably could have split this into 2 movies, but that wasn't really, I feel like, a thing in the early like, they didn't make two-part movies
No,
then. That's
no.
not a thing.
I mean, not until I mean, yeah, The Godfather exists, but even that wasn't a planned out multiple movie thing. It was just so popular they kept making 'em.
Sure. Speaking of costuming, though, why did all I felt like a lot of their helmets felt very, like, rodent, like, very rat-looking, like, all the designs of their helmets, like, some of them were cool and dragony, and I was like, "Okay, sick."
Lots of them came to points, and
Not
that
just
was
points, though, but
because
they looked like rats.
kind of. I mean,
I don't know.
I remember, when we were growing up and dad would have those like I don't even know what they were called, but they're like National Geographic like giant picture books and they would have a
Mhm.
whole bunch of like old armor helmets and that is kind of
Sure.
what they looked like. Like sure they
Okay.
weren't as
Maybe I
like
just don't remember, but I'm like
flamboyantly artistic in the ways that these are, but
yeah.
they did kind of look like that.
And I also always anytime I think it was a maybe it was how it's depicted in the original tale, but, like, I think it was a mistake to put Merlin, A, as not a old I thought he should have been older.
That was fucking with me the entire movie.
And B, what the fuck was that helmet thing that he was wearing? Just like this chrome, like
The
it
chrome
was
bald cap was so weird.
it was not a good look. It made me think of Flash Gordon, like the bad guy in that. It just there's several parts with Merlin that I was like, okay. A, he's not old enough. B, sometimes played this kind of like foolish kind of old, like not old
He
man.
was all over the place. I mean, and
He was all over the
that
place.
was kind of like don't get me wrong, there are some things that are dated that are still charming, but they're like Merlin's depiction in pretty much all of this just kind of frustrated me because it wasn't
Mhm.
consistent and
Well, they made him like a fumbling fool.
kind of. And granted, I have not read the original Arthurian legend. Maybe that's the way it was, but like, I mean, I think I literally have it written down on here. Like, yeah, I love all the armor and set design except for Merlin's. I don't get the
Mhm.
chrome bald cap. I don't get him dressing in a tattered bathrobe the whole movie. The staff is a nice idea, but it looks like it's too uniform and straight. Like when I picture a wizard staff, it's not like black PVC pipe. I
Yes,
don't know.
agreed.
And yeah, he should be older, and maybe it's just because we grew up with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and things like that. He should have a beard. Wizards have beards. It's just
Yes.
I don't know how else to like.
No, no, I agree.
Yeah,
I 100% agree. It took me out of it almost every single time.
and also you can't hear him a lot of the time.
Well, if you look, I don't know if they tried to dub him over because actually when
There
you
are some
hear him,
parts where the ADR is not synced up correctly.
it does
Yes.
not sync up well. Yeah.
So something that you first brought up, where we then almost immediately got off topic, unfortunately, when you were talking about the opening shot where it
Oh,
was
with Uther,
yes with
which is
Uther.
just Arthur without like it's just
It, it's Arthur without an A. Yes.
mhm.
I love that you can see the film grain in this.
Sure.
Like, I mean, I don't know, not to sound like Tarantino, but
Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't know. I like being able to see the age in this like that.
In some ways, yes. Like when they took like when the sword comes out of both the stone, but more so the lake at the very
Yes,
beginning when they like try to make it quote unquote magical by just putting some green lights on it.
they
That
did that a
felt
lot.
they
It
did,
was
but then
weird.
I mean, I think that felt very like, oh, this is early '80s technology to me at least.
Yeah, yeah. Something that I also had written down is that having just watched Nosferatu, this feels like something Roger Eggers.
He totally could do this.
Well, I mean, this yeah, it feels so up his alley. Like, give me
Yes.
some realistic dark fantasy with some really nice like
No, I
if
agree. I think he could do
like
this.
it would go hand in hand so well.
Like, if we were
And
just
what I
saying, like,
would
"Oh, if we were to remake this, who should do it?" Yes, he should do
yes,
this.
absolutely. Like I want him to remake this. I want them to put Roger Deakins in for cinematography, and I want them to have
Helen Mirren could still come back.
no, because then you'd see her without clothes, and that's not a image
Mhm.
anyone wants. I forgot where I was going with that, but yeah, I would love to see Roger Eggers make a new adaptation of this, and granted that he would do it in 2 parts.
Yes, probably. Did you, do you know where you know Uther from?
No, because he wasn't on screen that much. I didn't really recognize him.
He's like one of the main dudes from The Usual Suspects. He's like like the main
Oh,
guy.
Gabriel Byrne. Yeah.
Yeah. I also felt like okay, so this is I'm trying to do this chronologically. At the beginning of the movie, he's like waging war against this castle and clearly losing, and he's like, "Merlin, where's Merlin? I need my sword." And like, okay, he gets the sword. He becomes, he conquers the castle, and then at some point, uh, I can't remember when he's like, "Oh, I need the sword to be king." I think he's up on the ramparts with Merlin or something. It was at the very beginning, and that was over 2 hours. I don't remember. Either way, uh, I just felt like you need the sword to be king, dude. Really? Like, I feel like they weirdly both put emphasis on the sword, but also like later on when they're like, "Oh, the whole sword and the stone," I feel like they glossed over that so fast. Like the scene of the sword and the stone was like, oh, like 5 minutes, which is the only part that you really get to see uh Patrick Stewart, who actually knows how to act, be Patrick Stewart. I don't know. I felt
He
the
did feel kind of like a throw-in just so you can point at a screen and say, "Look, it's Patrick Stewart." I mean, even then, he was a
yes.
you know, he was a face. So,
Like I liked the little bit he was in it, but yes, it definitely felt like a throwaway.
yeah. I do like that. I mean, yes, there is magical things that are happening in this, but a lot of it is just like, family drama stuff. Like it it retained a lot of its Shakespearean qualities, I guess I would say. Whereas something like the Guy Ritchie version of King
I need to
Arthur,
rewatch that.
it's not bad, but it is really focused on action, and you lose, I think, some of the more interesting story that this one has. I think this one is a more interesting plot.
Well, I also on my desk right now is the like 2000, I think 3. It's called King Arthur with Clive Owen, Keira Knightley, and the guy from Fantastic Four.
That is an interesting take on it. I actually like that one a lot, but it is
I remember
certainly
seeing it,
different.
but I don't remember much about it.
Um, a lot of this story not going to be in it. It is more along the lines of, okay, King Arthur was not a real person, but what is the most realistic explanation we can have for him existing? And like, okay, there was a Roman occupation of the Britons at the time. What if he's a defecting Roman general and he builds an army out
Mhm.
of, the peasants at the time? It's a very interesting version of the story, but it is extremely different. I like it, but it is. I remember it not being terribly well received, unfortunately.
I'll rewatch it and find out. Either way, uh, so when I think it's Uther, again, the beginning of the movie was so I feel like long ago that like I barely fucking remember it now.
Was it
Uh,
King 1 or King 2?
no, it was Uther, but like he was hanging out with like his enemy after they made peace, and he's like,
Yes.
"Oh, let my wife dance for you,
That was a little
bro."
weird, right?
Oh well, no, okay. First of all, sure, that's a little weird practice. Again, medieval times. A lot of this women are definitely just possessions, but that's fine. Um,
Well, it's not fine, but it's understandable for the time. Let's not put
yes.
that out there.
Uh, but I could not. Okay, so Hayden, imagine the chick is dancing,
Yeah.
right? Now replace her with something that's made of, I think, vinyl or plastic. It's usually brightly colored, and there's a fan connected to the bottom. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Dude, I couldn't watch her
Or
dance and not think
maybe
of
I
the
do know what I'm talking, or maybe I do know, but not by your description.
you could put her next to the wacky inflatable tube man, and they'd
Oh,
blend right in. Oh, I couldn't
and
unsee it, dude. Like,
I
they
I
spent
did kind of have
like,
a
a good 5 solid minutes of just her dancing around this, like, castle courtroom thing, and I'm like, "Dude,
I did
her
have
and"
kind of a
like, it's
chuckle
ridiculous.
where they're like, I did kind of a chuckle where they're like, "Oh, she's gonna be have this, really sexual dance," and it's just kind of her spinning around and flailing like a crazy person.
Exactly,
I mean,
flailing.
it kind of reminded me of the dancing scenes from the original Star Trek series
Mm.
with William Shatner, because granted that is a infinitely smaller budget, but they kind of had the same look.
Well, I mean, from a different era, from a different era. Anyway, it is
Absolutely,
just something that
absolutely.
I could not see once I thought of it.
Sure. Um, how did you feel about there not actually being a dragon in this? Because Merlin's
Eh,
like, "Oh, we're gonna use the dragon's breath." Okay, it's fog.
well, all of the references to the dragon, it was more of, like, just the idea, not the actual thing, which, like,
Which,
there's a
maybe
bit.
maybe it was, like, technical limitations.
Sure, sure. But I think some of the stuff that they did was kind of cool, but again, it wasn't a dragon. Like, there's a bit where uh the he's riding on literally like on the layer of clouds. Kind of
Which,
dope, kind of
kinda
cool.
cool. Again, I'd love to see that redone and make it look cooler.
Sure. Uh but yeah, I felt like it was kind of I feel like again they were trying to honor the source material by probably using the language that was used,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
then
mean,
didn't back
I
up the
also,
language.
uh, sometimes, yes. I mean, I also kinda like the description of, oh, because Uther was asking Merlin before he does this whole ride across the fog. It's like, "Oh, where is this dragon? Where is it? Where is it hiding?" And I think, Merlin has the line of, "Oh, the dragon is everywhere at all times. It is unseen. It is what causes us to take up arms." So I like that, maybe it was an acquiescence on part of the movie, but I like the idea that the dragon isn't a physical thing. It's there to represent man's, you know, evilness, I guess, or something like that.
Mhm. No, I get it. But I also feel like if you step back and just obviously, I don't think it's not that I don't think I definitely don't agree with this, and I know it's from the time from the time of the '80s, but it's also from the time of the source material, and it is what it is, but, like, basically all the problems of the movie all stem around women, like,
Well,
just, like, of the dudes, like, oh, getting way too, like, hot and bothered for some chick. Oh, he's gonna ruin his kingdom. Or Morgana is being all pissy about her brother being king or whatever. I guess she's gonna have a son with him and then have him kill him. Like so
yeah,
many
I mean,
problems. I'm like, dude, it's just women. Ugh,
women. Oh, right?
ugh. Who
Am
needs
I
them?
am I right, fellow Andrew Tate fans? Women.
Dude, I literally wrote, "Women are the problem." Am I right, Merlin? Because it's just him, like, oh, fucking Morgana.
Well, I mean,
And then
so you're
randomly,
not
they're like, "Oh, yeah,
wrong.
here's a scene with, like, full-on tits. Just let's sprinkle that in wherever."
Well, you got a problem with tits?
No, just I don't know. It
It did feel that sometimes it was gratuitous in ways that it didn't need to be. Like, lots of the Camelot scenes, I mean, granted, it's like an hour and a half later, but like lots of the Camelot scenes, there's just naked women in the background, just
yes.
perusing with random nameless knights, just kind of there. Which, granted, maybe that was what was happening, but if it felt like they were put there just to break up like background monotony static, it didn't feel like they needed to be there. Speaking of didn't needed to be there in nakedness, um, Lancelot's sex scene with
Yeah.
Guinevere.
Drenevere? Which I literally talked to who I can't remember if I talked to you about this or someone else, but I'm like, "Oh, where he, like, fights for her honor because 'cause, Liam Neeson is like, "No, she's being unfaithful," but then immediately sleeps with her, but then feels regret
Right,
about it
right?
and then stabs himself in, like, the torso with his own sword and
That
then
was
wakes up. It's just
a
a
weird
weird
scene.
yeah, fucking weird, dude.
Like, granted, I'm sure that that was in the original story because I don't know why you would write it in if it wasn't, but, like,
Sure.
why have the scene where he fights his own suit of armor and stabs himself in the kidney? Take that shit out. I don't need to
But
see his ass.
again, I feel like that is where I think they stepped on the side of we wanna make this truly true to the source material versus like, "Oh, we probably could have adjusted some things and made it
Yes.
more palatable."
Um, uh, anyway, I was saying that, so during their eventual sex scene, like, you can tell the director's like, "Hey, just throw some woodland animals in there for largely no reason, because like, they'll have,
Hell
like,
yeah.
tall deer in frame for no reason, like, and it's just standing there, obviously just looking at the crewmates that are filming, and then it'll cut to a different scene, and there'll be a random crow on the log that they're laying on, just kinda looking at 'em, like, why? It wasn't even there in the earlier shot. Why is there a crow here? They put boa constrictors all over the
Yes, they did.
place,
Yes, they
which,
did.
granted, if you wanted to show weird creepiness in England and you didn't, you know what? I'm trying to make excuses for them putting African snakes in there, and I can't think of one. It's just weird.
Do you know where this was filmed? 'Cause I can't remember where I wrote it on my notes, but
Um,
basically, this is like
Lots of
most of this
Ireland,
movie
lots
is
of
just a
Wales.
mud pit.
Lots of Ireland, lots of Wales, so that does make sense.
Okay. Because yeah, sure, maybe that makes sense for the time, but I was like, "Oh, literally just every scene is just them covered in mud,"
Well,
which
I mean, I
I
kinda
get
like
it.
that.
No, but, like, it was either like, oh, they are, like, in crazy shiny armor where they've been buffing it for hours, or they are just completely, like, encased in mud. There wasn't a whole lot of middle ground.
Yeah, and I mean, the overly shininess, I think, is probably to make it look more like a fairy tale, like a legend. It's the same reason why frickin' Helen Mirren is decked out in black and glitter her entire screen time. Again, I understand it, and I think sometimes that works because it kind
Sure,
of makes it
sure.
look, again, it kind of makes it look like a dreamlike fantasy in some scenes. Sometimes it doesn't work and it looks really off putting.
Well, speaking of that, like, okay, I like their armor, which we have already referenced. However, it looks seriously thick and heavy as fuck. And any times they showed battle scenes, which again, they are just covered in mud, slipping and sliding all over the place, which is fine. It doesn't really look like they're actually like killing or actually hitting not armor.
Oh, I don't
I
know. I
I
think it does. I think
oh
I think we're going to disagree here. I think some of the battle scenes are some of the better choreographed and better shot parts of this movie. I think that there is, I actually what I have written down here is that lots of the wide shots of the battle, it really drives home the fact that there is no substitute for having 200 extras in armor hitting each other with swords on their
sure.
real
Well,
location.
some of the
Like,
wide shots, yes, but just I don't know, some of the close-up stuff where I'm like, "Oh, your sword literally just bounced off his back." Just the armor being crazy thick and no one is people are dying, but it doesn't I don't know if that feels as real, but I do agree with, like, the wide shots. I've written this a couple times where, like, these set pieces with the amount of extras and everything,
oh,
pretty fucking cool.
I mean, I had to like pause and think about like the amount of extras and stunt work that had to go into all of these shots. Like that's mind boggling. There's like 200 peasants and like 100 knights in any of these given epic battle scenes.
Well,
That's so much people.
not even just the battles, like, there's a couple points where they show inside Camelot, inside the castle, where I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh, the
there's
set
a
it's amazing."
there's a long tracking shot of that
Yes,
one
yes, I
of
wrote that down.
Sir Percival, I think. Well, he becomes knighted later, but like
Yes.
he starts out being one of the guy's squires. There's a
Mm-hmm.
long shot of him walking through the halls and walking around
Yes.
jesters and like court magicians
Well, that's where he
and
runs into Merlin, being an old
and
fool.
Merlin, and then also random naked women, as we said. Again, there's this was obviously a huge production.
I will say, I feel like Helen Mirren, kind of a babe. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
kind of a babe, dude.
Helen Mirren as an evil sorceress in 1981, absolutely a babe. I 100% agree with you.
The set where she and Merlin kind of like abscond to, that it feels like
Oh,
it's maybe not reality, or like it's a
like the weird
they're
like underground crystal cave thing.
yeah, also super cool. Kind of made me think of Superman, but
I had the same
very
fucking
cool.
thought. I had the same thought, like, oh, am I watching the Richard Donner Superman? It's almost like we're related or something. It's weird.
Something like that. Crazy.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it was a quick thought for me, but the shot of the mountain at night, um, where they're carrying torches around and they're on the top talking about the round table, but the opening shot of that mountain covered in
Mhm.
fire and all the you can see all the small torches marching up the mountain. Just very cool. I liked how that looked.
Did you I mean, this is more of a I don't know if you would know this reference, but um the bit where they're hunting for the grail, which again, they packed so much into this movie, like
Right?
they didn't I don't know if they even needed that whole like the hunt for the grail, because that I felt like is where it slowed down and sucked up a lot of time.
That was my thought as well. I mean, granted, yes, he does need the Grail to fully
Sure,
come back to his
sure.
powers. But like, I do know that they needed to find it, but the whole, you know, uh, they take a literal
All of that.
10
Yes.
years to find it, and then
Yes.
we have young Mordred there in the gold armor, which I thought was kind of cool looking.
Yeah, yes and no. I thought the helmet, especially when he was a young boy, was kind of ridiculous
When
looking.
when he was a young boy, it was less cool because I thought he was a young girl. Um,
A little bit, yes, I agree.
but when then it flash forwards again and he's like a teenager, I think
Well,
it I
that
think
was
that actually
another
looks pretty
question for
cool.
me. There were so many times where I was like, okay, are they flashing forward or is he magically becoming an adult? Because there was a couple points in the movie where I think they were trying to just jump times and it was never very clearly shown.
I agree that that could have been more clear, or they should have done better old age makeup because they do
Mhm.
flash forward a few times, and the only difference you can tell is that Arthur has slightly gray hair.
Slightly, yeah. And
Yeah,
they try to put wrinkles on him, sort of.
sort of.
Anyway, the reference I was saying, so there's like the overloading voice of what is the secret of the Grail. There is this whole I can't think we talked about this either last week or the week prior with maybe Master and Commander or Tron Legacy, but building up to like the announcement of Zack Snyder releasing his cut of Justice League. He
Yeah,
did these. I don't know. I can't remember if you were on the internets for this part,
I've
but
I've been on the internets for a while. Yes.
okay, because I would post like stills from his production, which no one had seen before, all in black and white, and the whole like every caption was part of that speech, like "Drink from the chalice and be reborn, you are
Yes,
my
I
Arthur," like that
I
whole
do
bit.
remember that.
Yes, a
I
super cool fucking marketing. Just saying, like I loved being a part
Mhm.
of that. But it's actually hearing it in the movie, I was like, oh, this is the thing. Like I know
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Um, throughout the movie, I kept thinking that the actor who was playing Merlin was Alec Guinness because
It
he
kind
kind
of
of looks
yes,
like
I
a
kind of
young
got
Alec
it.
Guinness.
Yes.
Yeah, he just constantly I constantly thought, "Oh, it's Alec Guinness," and then it wasn't. They have a very similar looking face. I like the colors in this. I think it was an interesting idea to pump everything up. I would actually say for the most part, I think it works. I think the shining a neon green flashlight for all intents and purposes on some things to make them look more magical doesn't translate as well as perhaps it did in 81.
Well, I literally at one point wrote, I felt like this should have been a little bit more magical. Like that word for word, that's what I wrote.
Well,
Because I don't know if
so
not that it
things like, the breath of the dragon and things like that. I mean, I think maybe we're used to there being more, flashy magic
sure
in more recent productions like The Hobbit and things like that. I think the magic in the original story was probably more like what we got in this.
perhaps
I already talked about that. Oh, so some of the scenes where they use the strong colors where, I mean, mostly towards the ending, but they started to really pump the neon kind of stuff. There's lots of points where the knights are all in the church and they have a really strong high blue coming through the cross inlaid in the wall. That looks really, really cool. As well as some of the final scenes where they're up on the top of that mountain and they got the red sun setting behind them. I just I just thought that was nice looking.
yeah. Again, that's why I guessed for like cinematography or uh set design
Mhm. Mhm.
or costuming. Sure, I get it. I think it's like most of the way there.
Sure. Um
I
I
do
think
think
it is.
they spent way too much time buffing all of their fucking armor. Jesus Christ, dude.
I don't know. I think it works. I don't mind that they are, literally wearing mirror shiny armor.
Which is, I literally think of like, okay, basically anytime you don't see a knight and or his squire, that's just I can imagine they're just like vigorously just like scrubbing those things for hours, and that's all they do.
Probably so. Probably so. It did kind of make me laugh at how unhandsome the King Arthur actor is. Like he's
He
not
seemed like
ugly.
no, but yes, I totally get what you're trying to say though.
Like the the standard in Hollywood for what is considered a handsome actor definitely has changed.
For sure. And I also felt like especially when he started, obviously he became king and like learned things along the way. But I
With like
also
the
felt like
squire where he didn't have the facial hair,
I thought he was just like this total idiot, like
he
kind of
did
a
kind.
well,
Yeah,
I almost felt like
is
is he
he?
like
Is he?
challenged?
I mean, don't get me wrong. Um, the women in this all very pretty, but some of the men are just not good looking. They just kind of look like they would be extras today.
Which granted, I mean, if they were trying to be knights from like that time period, they don't have to be super handsome, but
No, but I don't know. In my in my perfect reality where Robert Eggers remakes this, I can't see him casting a leading Arthur figure and have him just kind of look like the village idiot.
yeah, a bit. I do get that.
That's kind of all I have down. Other than I enjoyed this. It was nice to revisit it. I probably haven't seen this since I was 14, 13, something like that. So it's been a good 15-ish years.
I should preface it with I was not allowed to see this growing up, which I get.
I'd forgotten that, like, during some of the battle scenes, they just lop arms off and there's blood all over the place.
Which is weird because I feel like I saw Monty Python on the Holy Grail pretty early though, which has like limbs getting lopped off and
Yeah, but
stuff.
like
I don't know.
when they are de-limbing the Black Knight in Monty Python, it's super obviously goofy, and I guess it's the intent behind that because like this, you're not supposed to be laughing at the action. In Monty Python, you're definitely supposed to be laughing.
Yeah, definitely fair. I will say I think we've already shared some of this stuff on our Instagram, but we'll show more on the day we actually post it. But like the the poster for this is fucking awesome.
I so love the poster for this. It is I mean, I think I've mentioned this in probably earlier episodes. I love science fiction art. I love fantasy art
Yes, agreed.
from like the 70s and 80s.
No, it's super
Oh,
cool.
it's beautiful. It's stylized.
Mhm.
Frickin' I wish things looked like that more often these
Like,
days.
can you imagine a movie like if they made like a Marvel movie and made a cover like a poster like this for it? Oh, holy shit!
Well, so the interesting thing about that is, um, a lot of the Asiatic releases for Marvel movies and things like that get more stylized and interesting posters.
The what?
It
The what? A what?
When things get released to China and Japan and South Korea,
Oh yes, yes, that's very true actually.
um,
So it's really just us
I
being
would
sucky.
well, I don't know if it's us being sucky. I think I mean sometimes yes, but I think they have it down to a marketing science to where they know that they can, if they throw just a bunch of people's heads in a triangle, essentially, which is a lot of what their posters look like
Hmm.
these days, people will go see it because they'll recognize an actor or they'll recognize a character. I think if you go for the more artistic style, it won't read as well to people who don't watch trailers.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I wish things looked more interesting artistically when it comes to
Interesting.
posters. Yeah.
All right, ratings. What are you thinking?
This is a solid 3 out of 5 for me. I enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of things that don't age well. I think there's a lot of things that I wish they would slow down a little bit and take some time and maybe split it up into 2 movies if,
Hmm.
if I'm having my if I'm having my genie wish here and I'm saying, you know, split this into 2 movies, have each one be like 2 hours and fully flesh out more of the characters because I feel like they rush through so many things you don't get to know some of these characters very well.
True. I
But
mean, that's why even Disney spent an entire movie doing the Sword and the Stone.
yes, although that is a very different thing.
Well, sure, but I'm just again, I feel like that was like, oh, that was like 5 minutes. Okay, on to the next thing because we have a
Well,
story to like we have a
yeah, I
whole thing
mean,
to do.
for this being named Excalibur, what Excalibur is best known for was done and over in this like a 5-minute scene. It was really
Hmm.
quick.
Yes, that's I also thought that. I was like, "Oh, it's not really about Excalibur at all."
They could have just called it King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and it would make more
Mhm.
sense.
Something like that.
But
Agreed.
I mean,
Agreed.
I had a good time. I like Shakespearean drama, and this is very close to that. So I had a good time. I would love again, Roger Eggers. I know you listen to our podcast. Please make an adaptation of this.
Agreed on the 3 out of 5 stars. I think that's a fine rating. I would not go higher, but I definitely wouldn't go lower. There's some stuff that works really well, which I think we've referenced all the things. If you are curious into, ways to watch this, I think it's only available for either rent or buy. I don't think it's on any streaming.
Yeah, you would have to rent or buy it through Amazon. We borrowed the physical copy our parents had.
Okay, so
That
that
was
was
Excalibur from
1981
'81.
Excalibur. Okay. So from there, usually we kind of hop into another segment that we have more or less coined. It's called Icebreaker Audio. This is where we pick a kind of random icebreaker question that you might hear if you are at a new job or at a new school, or just kind of not generic questions, but like questions that you might uh, ask or answer to know at least a little bit more about a person. And we started this segment, I don't know when, it's been a while. Um, that way you find folk kind of understand who Hayden and I am outside of just the voices in your ears, where you are actual people. And hopefully with these questions being answered, you understand why we come to the decisions we do, especially obviously about the movie ratings and opinions that we have. And it gives us a chance to not just talk about movies. Uh, what is your favorite place on Earth and why?
Favorite place?
Favorite place?
Is this a place that I've had to have been to?
I, I, I guess not. Why? Would your favorite place be really a place you haven't been?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking.
Okay, I'm just trying
Um,
to answer the question. Yeah.
Give me a moment. Let me think. That's kind of a very broad question.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
Favorite place? Do you have an answer? If neither one of us have an answer, we can just pick a different one.
No, mine was gonna be probably underwater. Uh, gosh, maybe Kona, Hawaii, with like all the lava swim
Okay.
tubes, like swim throughs, good amount of light, but it is a little cold. But all the warmer spots like Cozumel that I've been to, or Indonesia, Fiji, they don't have the life that I like.
Favorite place?
Okay. Let's if you want to reword it, you can reword it to just a place you enjoy, like
Let's just say
no, just like if
okay,
you like,
okay.
going down to Cannon Beach or Portland or
So I
wherever. I
I
don't know.
think I would say I really enjoyed the camping spot I went to for my last birthday.
And where was that?
I I can't remember what it was called. I'm trying to think, and I don't want to get up and go grab my phone. Um, you know what? I know what I can do. I can look at my Instagram profile because I shared a picture of it. So I went out to Beacon. I went out to Beacon Rock State Park.
Oh, I know where
It's
that's at.
it's it's it's
Yes.
right on the Columbia. It's a
Yeah.
really really
Yeah.
nice spot.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how, granted, it's only like a 3 hour drive away from me, but it felt really nice and secluded. Um, it was really peaceful. Had a good time there. Got to get some peace and quiet and just kind of sit alone with my thoughts for a weekend. It was really nice. So I think I'd say there, and if anything, I'm probably planning on going back again there this year. So
Nice.
yeah, I'd say either that or there is a very nice public park near me that goes around a lake that is just a nice time to be around um, on the weekends if I want to get a walk in.
Actually, now that you say that, Green Lake up in like northish Seattle.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Uh, a really great place to walk. There's lots of cool, nice little shops too. Like there's a pizza spot, and then there's also a Ben and Jerry's right next to it, right next to the lake. Have lots of really good memories there. Um, and that was like I don't want to say formative years when I moved to Seattle, living alone for those first couple years. Like lots of time over there, either like on my e-bike, walking with a dog, with a friend, whatever. But yeah, I feel like mine has to involve. I feel like it has to involve water somehow. So,
it would be weird if it didn't, honestly.
although like I feel like maybe again, I feel like favorite is that's a hard question because I mean, there's lots of like I really like Camp Shepherd, like going up to
Sure. Well,
staff mom and me camps for Cub Scouts or
like I wanted it's okay. I really like the Grand Cinema near me. I think it's
oh
a
yeah,
nice community theater. On the other
sure,
hand, there are tons of places that I enjoy that are, I don't want to say special to me, that I like being around, but
no,
I
they can
think
be
it's
special.
hard to nail down a quote unquote favorite place out of all of them. But yeah, I do enjoy that campsite I went to though.
Okay. So Hayden likes secluded quietness sometimes,
I
and
I absolutely do. Yes.
Duncan likes apparently
You
having
like
patience with a bunch of little kids and or the ocean. Cool. So that was Icebreaker Audio for episode 33 featuring Excalibur. From here, our next segment that we usually do is we talk about anything that we either have seen recently or are planning to see that we're looking forward to, or trailers or anything like that.
Well, as usual, Duncan, I believe you probably watched more than me. What have you watched recently?
Not a ton because I was out of town over the last weekend for a bit, so I haven't watched a ton of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and some of this I watched preemptively, so I'm planning ahead for this podcast. So like, I don't want to talk too much about some things because I want to save it for the actual episodes. because I watched things like Pride and Prejudice. I watched Titan AE. Um, I watched something called Stir Crazy from 1980. This is
I
uh
think I've heard of this.
this is Richard Pryor, like the very well-known comedian, and
Yeah,
Gene
with
and Gene
yeah, yeah,
Wilder.
yeah, yeah, with freaking Young Frankenstein guy.
Yes, they are wrongfully put in a like Texas prison, and they have to break out, and they use the cover of a rodeo to like cover their escape. It's There's some fun parts.
It sounds incredibly 80s-ish.
Yes, it does make me kind of make it. It makes me think of like Blazing Saddles a little bit because of
Yep,
how Gene Wilder is. Um, I'm gonna wait for Freddie to stop shaking. You good,
that's
dude?
okay.
Okay. And then today, during my break at work, because it was super slow, and I have Amazon Prime, and it suggested this to me, and I just decided to put it on. I watched something called Snack Shack. This was a 2024 release, I believe.
Never heard of it.
It's not super well known. There's not a ton of people in it that you would recognize. Like there's one or two like C-list actors as side characters. It was actually very good. It's a like coming of age two like 15, 16-year-old boys like work at a snack shack over the summer at a pool, and it's just all the things that could possibly happen in a coming of age
Hmm.
movie. I don't it was actually pretty enjoyable.
I'm
Is it
I'm I'm
gonna
looking
win
at it
any
right now.
Oscars? No, but it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean it looks decent. It looks like it's got a 7 out of 10 most places.
Yeah, yeah. Like I wouldn't like go out of my way to tell people to watch it, but if someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch this," I'd say, "Oh yeah, it was fun."
Cool, cool, cool. Are you looking forward to anything?
Um, so I might be watching Nosferatu this coming week at some point. So my work has it. Like I have the ability technically to watch it anytime before the 7th is when our ability just doesn't like our key times out to watch it.
Mhm.
Um, so I might watch that, which I'm kind of looking forward to.
If I'm
I
not
don't.
able to join you for it, I would actually be very interested to hear what your thoughts are, because it is not a horror movie in a way that I think will actually scare you, but it is certainly interesting.
I don't know. There's parts where I was like setting up the movie to play, where I skip around to make sure it's loud enough for conversation, but not too loud for like big sounds or explosions.
Mhm.
Uh, and I could see how this would be pretty, to me at least, this could be pretty creepy.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it is definitely creepy all the way through. To me, it just never jumped all the way into actually being scary.
We'll see. I will report back. Other than that, not really. Oh, yeah, I'll talk about this maybe after or much closer, but I think it's the day after Valentine's Day or whatever that day is, the sun or Saturday. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go see La La Land in concert, which is gonna be
Um,
fucking awesome.
sure, sure.
I've done it
That
once before.
Saturday, I have tickets to watch Paddington, so I will probably not join you.
I I wasn't planning on you joining me, but that's okay. I have other parties involved, and that's all right.
Sure, sure, sure. I mean, it's Valentine's Day. That makes sense.
Well, hey, just to be clear, this is the day after, so it is not a. I'm just trying to make sure
Okay,
this
whatever.
is not a Valentine's thing. This is just happened to be when the movie that I really like was showing in concert. That's all.
Sure, 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 sure.
Well, just in case people are listening, this is not a Valentine's thing.
Okay, cover all your bases.
I think that's it. Anything else you can think of?
So for me, I mean, obviously, as I just mentioned, I'm going to be watching Paddington. Looking forward to that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Um, I'm looking forward to a horror comedy called Companions. It's a Jack Quaid movie where it's set
It
in an
looks.
alternate future where he buys a living sex doll and she goes haywire and starts stabbing people. I think it looks both very funny and might have some good scares. So, and I like Jack Quaid in general, so why not? Other than that, though, there's the Looney Tunes movie that I want to come out, or sorry, that I want to watch, kind of just based upon principle. but I can't think of much of anything else.
Again, it is that season for lack of
January,
things.
February. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, looking ahead, I'm like, "Oh, like, in the next in as long if you give it a couple months, there's gonna be some bangers coming." But,
Oh, I mean, once you get into like June, July, gonna be
well,
rocking with some good movies.
yeah, like Mickey 17, Dead Reckoning,
Sure.
Formula 1. I mean, there's going to be movies coming. It's just you have to wait for them, so
Yep. 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 Yep.
well, I think that's it, folks. Thanks for listening, hopefully, to the entirety of that, ramble or that discussion or whatever you wanna call it. If you agree with our thoughts on Excalibur or if you disagree, you might have to tell us either way. You can leave comments or direct messages on all sorts of different platforms. And before we go, we should probably tell you that next week, since Hayden and I have planned out a bit of movies for the future so we kind of know what we're watching,
Next couple
next
months.
week,
Yeah.
mhm, next week we'll be watching, reviewing, and discussing Oblivion with Tom Cruise. So if you're curious, I'd say check that out on, I believe, Netflix. And
Netflix, although I think we both have physical copies, but yes.
yes, yeah, that's very true. Either way, I'd say check that out, and then yeah, hang in there till next week.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.